Hey everyone, this is Jim Monaco. I am presenting to you along with Lucas. I know Lucas will likely be in class, so we are going to present our methods of contextual research midterm, where we are kind of in this process. I first want to thank everyone. I know everyone's busy, so thanks for your time. Also, thanks for your openness just to listen to this presentation and learn with us. So let me slide down. I know I'm going to go through some of this quickly because I know the class has already heard some of this, but just want to refresh everyone's memory a little bit about the intent statement. So our project began with just a shared concern about how vaping affects young people's physical health, also their emotional well-being. Through this process, we want to understand just not only why teens start vaping, but also what holds them there. Whether that's a combination of stress, identity, social belonging, how that turns into experimentation, into dependence. The problems with vaping, we identify vaping as, multi-dimensional problem. It's physiological, psychological, it's also social. Habit links to addiction, hidden use, sneaking, reduced concentration in school, reduced concentration just in life in general, and even impaired brain development. So it creates an ecosystem of various behaviors that to us we felt like could easily spiral for adolescents. They're still forming these habits, but they're still forming their identity. So those two things kind of coinciding can be really dangerous. Just quickly, causes, curiosity, peer influence, targeted marketing, uh, quest for, social acceptance. A lot of these things make vaping seem harmless. They seem trendy. These kind of same forces also obscure the risks. They normalize nicotine use, or THC use even, and they turn it really into a kind of a shared social ritual rather than an individual health choice. So that's problematic for us. Some of the things that we sort of brainstormed in terms of possible solutions, um, we have here these things that we thought might actually help out. We'll talk a little bit about like what we have found out when we've done our survey, when we've done some of our interviews. But some of the things here, we thought maybe a habit tracker, what could social support and professional help look like. So those were some of the ideas that we sort of brainstormed. Here was our umbrella question, just like this idea, how can we intervene to reduce vaping? What makes people vape? That was a kind of our sub question one. Some of the questions that we have here on the right hand side were things that we eventually use for our interview protocol. Sub question two, what is the influence of withdrawal on relapse? Again, sort of an area that we were interested in, and then turned into both survey questions and then interview questions. And then sub question three is how does peer pressure influence vaping? And once again, as the other questions, we sort of morph this into our protocol for our interviews, and also into our survey. Here's the vaping dependent stakeholder map. Again, we went through this in a previous presentation, so I don't want to belabor that, but that's sort of the folks that we teased out prior to doing the survey, prior to doing any interviews. And, these names of influential folks or stakeholders did pop up in some of the interviews that we will present on. We're still conducting some of those as well. This is our user journey map. Um, and again, like this idea of like what are our ideas of what this process is and how does that actually play out in the interviews and the survey data. Same here for the empathy map. What do we think at-risk teens or just teens in general, adolescents, they don't necessarily have to be at risk. Like what are they possibly dealing with, like what are they thinking through. And again, this comes out in especially in the interviews when we ask specific questions about these particular sort of getting into more of the social, emotional, psychological, and mental aspects of addiction or dependency on a particular habit. Where did that originate from? What was going through your thought process and who sort of influenced you? Some of the secondary research that we talked a little bit about, I know we presented this a little bit. So some of the demographic information, the national data that we looked at really confirmed that while youth vaping rates have declined slightly, use among young adults does remain sort of steady, particularly the age range of 18 to 24-year-olds. And that's kind of the age range that we are looking at in our interviews. That overlap between adolescence and early adulthood really makes prevention and cessation kind of an intertwined challenge. Kind of continuing with some of the secondary research that we did prior to going into our primary research, quitting outcomes evidence has shown that only about 1 in 5 people really succeed in quitting on their own, but success doubles when, or nearly doubles when structured support like having a hotline or a quit line, text programs, apps are introduced. So that really underscores the kind of value of design interventions that provide an ongoing personalized contact. Secondary research support available. So, what are the support systems? So, today's cessation landscape really offers text message programs. There's some digital coaching, nicotine replacement therapies, but adoption sort of remains inconsistent. We found in this type of research, we learned that, the best tools combine both technology along with human empathy. So how do we create something like that? And that gives users guidance, it gives them emotional validation. Continuing with some of the secondary research, the market and usage landscape, market data shows overall youth tobacco use has reached historic lows, but vaping, that cultural foothold does persist due to the flavor marketing, due to influencers sort of trending. And we sort of felt like that's kind of a paradox, and that illustrates why design solutions really have to go beyond regulation and engage social meanings of vaping. So here is a little bit of now going into survey. We at this point, unfortunately, we through the age range that we're looking at, we are looking at some students who might still be in school, so it's tricky to get a lot of those participants or college age students who are really busy. At this point, we have 20 participants who have filled out the survey, so we're working with a very low sample, and we know that in quantitative research, we probably would not be able to generalize with such a low sampling, but we're trying to make it work. So the survey analysis, our survey of 20 participants, they're mostly aged 19 to 24 at this point. We found vaping operates simultaneously as a social act and an emotional release. So half of the respondents were students and half were working adults in that range of 19 to 24. But across both of those groups, stress relief and social connection consistently emerge as the primary motive for starting vaping and continuing to vape. Even those who express dislike for vaping, they continue the habit because they felt it's calming and they felt it's sort of like a communal situation. Here, a little bit of perceived frequency and effects. Daily use was the most common pattern. Half of the participants that we surveyed reported no perceived health effects. And that kind of reveals a worrying disconnect between perception and what is actually reality. The remaining half mentioned health effects like coughing, shortness of breath, sleep disruption, but very few identified as being addicted. So that gap sort of between self-perception and physiological dependence signals a good opportunity for education framed through empathy rather than fear. Moving along through survey results, quitting attempts, success rate, about half of the respondents had tried to quit, but nearly three-quarters relapsed. So their stories highlight how stress, how social environments, boredom really do overpower individual willpower. And our takeaway is kind of clear from that, that successful cessation requires an ecosystemic change. We need to support users' routines, their relationships, their emotions, not just their decisions. Through the six interviews that we've done so far, a little bit of the analysis of that, kind of to humanize the survey statistics. We have conducted six in-depth interviews with diverse participants. Each described vaping as a social ritual and an emotional coping tool. For example, one of the participants vaped with family members to bond, which was, fascinating, while another used vaping to manage anxiety and sleeplessness. So these stories really do reveal vaping as kind of a complex situation, and it plays a complex role in social belonging and self-soothing. Moving along, we have some of the takeaways here and some of the things that we have learned. Uh, some of the sort of critical insights that we're seeing here. Five themes really emerge that um, vaping evolves from social to emotional behavior, stress and routine drive dependence, environment matters more than willpower, and youth and adolescents and young working adults really desire authentic kind of non-preachy support. Vaping connects deeply to their identity. So these insights kind of shift the conversation from discipline to the way we would design, and kind of leads us to the question, like, how can we redesign environments, the messages and the support so that quitting feels possible and it also feels dignified? Here's some of those kind of takeaways that I was just talking about a little bit more in depth. Um, these are the critical insights that we came away with. Vaping is social and emotional, stress and routine, drive dependence. Quitting is harder because of the environment, not willpower. Um, some of these things that I just mentioned, and some of the takeaways and these critical insights here. Sensory cues, current quitting versus ideal quitting. So this is the current vaping experience right here. We analyzed sensory cues around quitting and found that current quitting experience is framed kind of by chaos, guilt, and isolation. A lot of images of struggle sort of dominate. And then as you scroll down here, the ideal quitting experience, in contrast, the ideal experience kind of feels guided and social and hopeful. Images that kind of feature progress and exercise and friendship. So this shift kind of from punishment to empowerment shows just how sensory language and imagery can sort of transform how people experience behavior changes. A little bit of insights from this, kind of what I was talking a little bit about there, in more of a format that is kind of written out and spelled out for you all, to go along with those images there. So kind of the design implications. I think we're thinking our next step is to imagine sort of interventions informed by all of these insights. We are kind of envisioning a peer support app that tracks stress and cravings, maybe something that connects users with a mentor, and then something that has like maybe like badges or this like gamification, like celebrate small wins. We also want to propose school-based circle of support groups, modeled after an indigenous uh, form called Circle of Courage to restore belonging. We talked about a little bit about like a gamified dashboard, visualizing progress, um, and badges. We think each concept really transforms quitting from isolation into more connection and moving from willpower into shared empowerment. So, reflecting on all of this, we have a bit to go, but we learned a lot from the young people we interviewed. They're not clinging to nicotine as much as they were clinging to a sense of being calm or forming their identity or their community. So, as designers and educators, we have to sort of reimagine what belonging and relief can look like without a vape in hand. So, that's sort of our challenge. So, design becomes more um, uh, both an act of empathy and a pathway to healing. We want to thank you, Professor Nair, for mentoring us, giving us a lot of feedback. We hope to get some feedback from this presentation. Want to thank our classmates for all the thoughtful dialogue that you've provided throughout the process. Your feedback just continues to shape a lot of the contextual research and human-centered design that we're going for. So Lucas and I are really grateful for the opportunity to share a little bit of our findings. And at this point, we welcome any questions, comments, any suggestions you have for improving our work. And just want to thank you all again for listening and learning with us. Thank you so much.